Now on BBC Two, a look at the turning point in presenter Penny Smith's life.
I had an early turning point. I was 6, and I wrote, "When I grow up, I want to be a journalist or a pharmacist." Now, I know for a fact I didn't want to be a pharmacist. It's just that I could spell it, and it looked lovely on the page. I think I probably mispronounced it. I think I probably called it pharmacist, like a newly snogged farmer, but I was always very good at mispronouncing things, mostly because I was fascinated by words, and the longer the better, and the more chaotic collection of letters they were, the better. In fact, that's stayed with me forever. I still mispronounce things even now. Until I was about 21, I used to say ubiquitous. And then one day somebody said, "Don't you mean ubiquitous?" They probably thought I was being ironic when in fact I was being mispronuncionic. And that's generally how I found out how to pronounce everything. Mizzled, I used to say, which sounded so much more interesting than misled. And albeit was one I used to use instead of albeit. A ridiculous word, albeit. It's actually 3 words, isn't it? Albeit. And yet when it's written, it looks like albeit. At school, I knew I was going to have a bad day if I started off by looking at the cornflake packet and thinking, why don't we pronounce it cornflackies? Although they probably did in Chaucer's times or something. I would like cornflackies for my Briac fest. Whatever. And then I would have a problem in the class because the teacher would say something like, "What does the author mean when he says this?" And I'd be away. I'd be thinking, why don't we pronounce what? Wahat. And if we're going to pronounce it what, why don't we write it W-O-T, like what we used to write on the school walls? In fact, the only good thing that one particular English teacher, who I loathed, ever did was introduce me to the Rivals and Mrs. Malaprop. And even now, when people talk about being at the very pinnacle of their careers, I want to correct them and say they're the very pineapple of their career, because it sounds so much more thrilling, doesn't it, being at the very pineapple of your career? You might presumably right on the top pointy bit of a very pointy pineapple. Much more exciting. And also, the sound of words. There are some words that just slip off the tongue. Deliquesce, sesquipedalian, Tmesis. It's quite a nice one, Tmesis. It's when you put one word inside another word. People do it all the time, fan-bloody-tastic or whatever. But the trouble is you can never use them. You can shake out these words like a bit of a carpet and you can say, "Look at this lovely, glittery, shiny word." And people think you're being a brat, which you probably are. I remember reading a newspaper article with a whole load of medieval words, and like mubble-fubble, which meant melancholy. Wouldn't that be lovely to say? Oh God, I use that word lovely again. You see, you could say, "I had a terrible attack of the mubble-fubbles," which would be not quite as bad as saying depression. And what about those wonderful old words like footpad and varmint and gadzooks? I mean, wouldn't it be much more fun if we said gadzooks whenever something dodgy happened? But sadly, you can't use it. In fact, I think part of the problem is that I like made-up words. How come I can remember the whole of things like "'Twas Brilligan the slithy toves did gyre and gimble on the wabe, all mimsy were the borogroves and the mome rast that grape," which is from Alice in Wonderland, when I can't even remember any Shakespeare.